Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another live presentation of SumerDaily. Shawn, we don't have too many of these. We got to enjoy this one, and this was a good one to enjoy because we had two, playoff teams here that were fighting to get position, fighting to ensure their spot in the playoff, and just two pretty good and interesting teams in the Broncos and the Chargers. But first off, buddy, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Sam, and I got to get this on the record. Our text messages, they're of course always off the record. Yeah, you don't want to bring the text messages out to the podcast. That's not really something that we have to do, but you do this all the time. Obviously our buddy Tage Seth does this, the other friends in our group chat. You send the text in the first half and you say ball game. After like a big play from the defense, you assume, all right, yeah, the Broncos are going to win. And every single time I get it, I get so mad. And I always send the same exact response, whole lot of ball game left. No matter what it is, no matter if it's 49-7 in the first half or anything. So I just feel like, you have to answer for that specific action that you take. It feels like, did you shift the entire tide of this game with that one text? Maybe. You, of course, comedically send me the ball game text after the final Herbert play. But Sam, what do you have to say for yourself?
So this was actually the win-win ball game because I did a lovely show on our friends at ESPN 700 today, and I said that I thought if Justin Herbert was going to turn the ball over multiple times, that the Broncos would win. Kind of a lock, kind of a vanilla statement there, but I thought that was really going to be the game plan for the Broncos defense. And so we see some beautiful play in the first half by Bo Nix, orchestrated by Sean Payton, we learned as the game went on. And then we saw Justin Herbert struggling a little bit, and the rare Justin Herbert pick. And you got to pull the ball game lever at that point, but it's also
no, you literally don't. No,
yeah,
you have to pull that.
You got to pull the ball game lever at that point. The offense is cooking, the defense makes a pick on a player that very rarely turns the ball over, and you pull the ball game lever because you're feeling good, and in my case, that you can fall back on me very, very early season saying that the Chargers were a lock to be a playoff team, and sure enough, ball game. The Chargers are a lock to be a playoff team.
It feels like, Sam, you're the anti-take vice. You're playing both sides, so you always come out on top. All right, fine. You got to do what you got to do. As you mentioned, you only get one more TNF game. Of course, coming up, we have some island days in terms of Saturday games, right. Some days on Christmas. We'll see. Maybe we get to keep doing those lives, and I will bring up every time that you say ball game. And I will say, that first half, it was so controlled by the Broncos, where you have Sean Payton, to me, just doing a fantastic job of what they're scheming up. It's all the motion. It's all the personnel diversity. It's being attacking gap scheme at you in the run game. You get the dash concept where it's like you pretty much get a rollout without play action. I think just creative ways to get Bo Nix on the move, get him comfortable. And Nix ends this game with the 3.2 ADOT, which is in the first percentile. Now, Sam, I wish it was under 2, just because that would be, I think, a fun thing to say overall. And you obviously have that situation later on in the game where you have that out and up where it's a guy open, and unfortunately you can't connect there. And then when you turn over to the other side of the ball, you have Justin Herbert playing like an absolute maniac, just a total kind of difference in styles from those two guys.
So I want to talk about the Nix and Herbert dichotomy here, because it was kind of a tale of two halves, but we got to learn a lot about both of these players in this game. And some of these games you don't get to learn a lot. We had a snow game from Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson, and that wasn't a game you were going to learn a lot from. And every once in a while there's injuries or this or that happens, but this felt important, particularly as we're going into the playoffs, particularly as these are division opponents that we will be seeing many, many more times throughout the year. And particularly because we had two young quarterbacks solidifying kind of the overarching narrative of their season at this point. And I think you highlighted in the red zone, the real turning point was, they run that play action. I think it was Javonte Williams, or at least one of the Broncos running backs, is wide open. It should be a walk-in touchdown, and Bo Nix just throws a heater that he can't come up with. And it felt like that was the turning point in the game, where the narrative of Bo Nix has a low ADOT. Bo Nix can't really get it done. Bo Nix is missing wide open guys very far down the field, violently underthrowing them. And then on the flip side, Herbert turns the ball over. He very rarely turns the ball over. and he turns back into the Justin Herbert we know, delivering with pressure. The Justin Herbert we've come to know this year, making things happen with his legs. Unfortunately, and I got to hate on this, we get the quarterback design run in the red zone, and it's on a 2-point conversion. It's not on like second or third down. It's on a pretty solidified passing situation. But, I'll let it slide just because I got to see him do a little bit of running and because he was able to pull the game out. So let's start with Bo Nix. We've talked a lot about Bo Nix throughout this year. We love how the way he's mobile. We love how the way he avoids sacks, but he really wasn't able to do that today. And it seemed like that was the downturn of the game. What did you see while you were watching, Shawn?
In that first half, it really felt like, Sean Payton was pulling the right strings where you're getting Bo Nix to play fast. You're getting just a few situations where he's kind of ripping that in ball. You get Cortland Sutton on the crosser. And I think you can build an offense around Bo Nix when he is making that type of throw, when he is just, you got to let it loose at certain times. As you mentioned, his mobility is a huge, huge positive. In the second half, it felt like the Chargers were in the first half there. I think maybe hey, we got to take a little bit of just stress off of our corners overall. We don't want to send a ton of pressure. But then as you get into that second half, you are just sending the heat at these guys. I think in a really, really helpful way for the Chargers defense that you're testing Nix, whether it's, can you hang in there? Are you going to be mobile enough? Are you going to be able to hit kind of that deeper throw? So I would imagine that all defenses are going to continue to challenge Nix in that sort of way. So when they get to the playoffs, I assume they get to the playoffs. Now, do we get the Bengals sneaking in the playoffs? Sam, I personally wouldn't mind that, but that's for future games to be decided. I just think that Peyton has to do a lot of work in terms of you're getting those different RPOs, you're getting different move the pocket type situations. You're obviously leaning on that run game, so you maybe think like the ceiling of the offense, it just looks a little bit different. And like you can't just draft Justin Herbert, right? These players don't just happen to appear in every single year of the draft. Of course, we've started doing our work for prospects. Just when you look towards some of the quarterbacks in this draft, it's not like you're going to have five guys going in that first round. So maybe you could say, hey, the Broncos were smart to take Nix just because you don't want to have them taking a quarterback here. They're eating a bunch of money on their cap. They're going to be a playoff team. Certainly, right. I think led by a fantastic defense. So just a tough kind of flip from that first half to that second half where like Nix has looked good at times this year. I don't want to pretend like he's been just bad all year because he hasn't, right? When he is confident, when he's throwing a little bit into that intermediate area, when you bump that A dot up, now maybe you don't want to live with that or live in that situation with him all the time, but when you're accessing just different parts of the field, but I think the Chargers in this game did a good job. You're building a roof over the offense. You're forcing that check down. You're able to make tackles that maybe you aren't able to in that first half. And then, you end up having I think a really positive day, even though some of maybe the numbers favor Nix. I think a lot of that goes to some of those yards after catch.
Certainly. And kind of breaking down Nix's play in this game, I thought in the first half, they were able to run the Sean Payton of old offense. They were hitting on the screens. There was a lot of play action involved. Beautiful on the touchdown. In fact, the play action, Bo Nix escapes the pocket, or it looked like a more designed escape of the pocket, but was able to pull the guys up. He delivers a good ball into the end zone, and it was clicking on all cylinders. I felt like as the game went on, it was, we're going to try a screen. Okay, they're all on that. The adjustment has been made in the screen game. We're going to shut the run down, and Bo's just going to check it down. He doesn't have the ability to get it deep, and that really showed up on the play where it looked like the wide receiver is wide open with 3-4 yards of cushion on him down the field. Bo throws it late and extremely high. Tarheeb still is able to keep up. May it have been a PI? Perhaps, but you got to give it to the guy, especially on a throw that just did not execute. It did not do the job that it needed to do. And even down the stretch, like it looked like check down after check down after check down. This shows up in the statistics. You mentioned the very low A dot, like something like first percentile. And it's just going to be very difficult to win games when you have a player on the other side who is catching fire like Justin Herbert. I was really excited about his ability to create in this game. I thought that was the difference in a game where, the MO of the Denver Broncos is that they are going to try to limit separation as soon as the ball is snapped. And I was really worried about these wide receivers' ability to get separation. It turns out that if Justin Herbert is going to hang back in the pocket and or escape the pocket and try to make plays, gives them a little bit more time to make separation. That seemed like the difference today to me, Shawn. What did you think?
I mean, Herbert is such a special player. It's so awesome watching him play quarterback. He is so talented. I think he is so smart. I think he goes through his process so well. And I think that ankle injury is annoying because, you know, Sam, you want to run these quarterbacks like 25 times a game. You want everyone to really buckle their chin strap. And I'm not going to go that far, but you know, Herbert's play extension is a really big deal where, you know, for quarterbacks, you're a throwaway guy, you're I'm going to run guy, you're I'm going to check down guy. He will get to his check down, you know, sometimes maybe even a little bit too quickly. But you see towards the end of this game, when he scrambles, when he takes off, that's a problem. Like that is a big athletic man running in the open field. I think it's a tough job for defenses to have to deal with that. Like you just get one guy slipping on the turf just a touch. When he's trying to change direction, the Herbert just runs by you. So I was really happy to see that. I think in this game, they really leaned on a lot of play action, which I think that's a smart thing to do, right? Get a Herbert under center. You have this kind of front as if you're just like we're a run focused offense. You're able to pull linebackers down a little bit. They were creative in the way that they were getting those crossers from one side of the formation to the other side of the formation. I thought that had just caused some problems for Denver at different times. But Sam, I mean, Denver's defense in the first half, they were really good. Like that interception was so sick where you're in a cover 4 defense. You're occupying that inside safety to Herbert's right side. You're running in like a deeper inbreaker on that outside, and you think you can fit the ball in there. The cornerback who's replacing Riley Moss just makes a really nice play. And, you know, even on the Broncos defense, just want to shout out our guy, Brandon Jones. Just so happy to watch him continue to play at a high level this season. So you have these games where you can stop him in the first half, but he can take over. He really can just fully take over a game that no matter what you're throwing at him, he's going to be able to find receivers, whether it's McConkey, whoever it is, making throws to players. So I really just enjoy watching Herbert. I think it's hard to contain him for an entire game. And look, he's had ups and downs this season. I think that when you look at both of these teams' infrastructures going forward, they're different in like you probably like both of the offensive lines. I think the run game for Denver's probably been better this year. Receivers, I think both teams can, of course, add players. Maybe you like just Sutton's kind of top end. Of course, you like Ladd McConkey. But then when you have Nix and Herbert as the signal callers there, what you can do with a playbook is just so much wider with Herbert. You don't have to like scheme around him. You know, you should, no matter who your quarterback is, you, of course, should get them in the best scheme. But Herbert can just make throws that other quarterbacks can't. And I mean, that kind of got him into trouble on that interception today. But there's just so much he can do that no one else in the NFL can do.
Exactly. So I want to bring up 2 stats in this game that I think are interesting and perhaps a little contradictory to either the counting stats or what we saw or what we thought. The first one is dealing with Denver's defense. You mentioned that you thought Denver's defense did a lot of good things. Obviously, they give up 34 points. In terms of EPA per play, the Chargers were 90th percentile. I also agreed. I thought they were doing okay things. Did it really just come down to, you know, mid-season, we were ready to say that Justin Herbert is elite of the elite. We finally got a game where it seemed like Justin Herbert was just winning the game by himself. Do you think that was truly the case? It was just Justin Herbert making plays and there's not a lot you can do, like when a pitcher gets hot in baseball? Or what were there kind of underlying problems that led to such production for the Chargers against the Broncos defense?
It did feel like overall the Broncos execution in the second half wasn't as good. A few coverage, you know, blown assignments, obviously a little bit of tackling and allowing yards after contact, yards after the catch. So it's not that, hey, you couldn't have done anything in this game. I think if the Broncos just had a cleaner sheet in that second half on defense, I think they would have been able to be in a position to win this game. It's tough, you know, when like Herbert makes your margin for error so much thinner. So I'm glad that the Chargers were able to bounce back in that second half because, I mean, you sent the ball game text, right? Or early in that first half, it felt like it was going to be a really long day. We were starting to think about, well, what are the playoff scenarios in different ways? What if the Chargers keep on losing? Are the Dolphins going to get in? Are the Colts? What about the Bengals? What's going to happen there? So, you know, on a day where Herbert is really able to get going in that second half, I just hope his ankle it gets back to as good as it can be, because then you can have some more of those scramble plays that are just so backbreaking to deal with as a defense.
Certainly. And so on the flip side, let's look at the Chargers. You look at just the basic stat line for the Chargers running game. 28 carries, 117 yards, 4.2 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns, long of 43. That seems okay. That seems, especially for an ailing running back room, seems like it's good. You flip over to the advanced stats, not good at all. 32nd percentile EPA per play, even worse, 30th percentile success rate. How is this Chargers running back room going to make it back? Or is there any chance, and it's just going to be Herbo ball from here on out?
I mean, it certainly feels like it's going to be and has to be a lot of Herbo ball. I do think that Vidal is a little bit maybe more explosive than Edwards, so you're able to get some of those bigger plays there. I don't know, I'm just not sure exactly how to approach it because at times it feels like it's like a dogmatic, like we are going to run the ball, like no matter what, it's going to be our style. You do have a good offensive line. I don't want to pretend that they don't. It is also tough because, the receiver room is not the best receiver room in the league. I just think that as long as you continue to have a high play action rate, like that is really what I want to see on a day that you're just not really able to get it going on the ground. Although in that last drive, they were. Now, do I think that justifies some of those first down runs? I personally don't, but I think you get into early down play action. You get maybe some second downs where you're catching nickel on the field or something like that, where then you're getting to runs. Or if you're able to this offseason find personnel that lets you stay in 11, so where you're going to draw nickel, but then also use that kind of third receiver as a little bit more of kind of a move tight end type piece. So you're able to get diversity in that way. But Harbaugh wants to play hardball, right? He wants to get heavy. He wants to run power. He wants to do that. I wonder kind of what the offense overall, as it evolves, as it matures, just as an offense, but like as Herbert is like it's not even break glass in case of emergency. It's like that is what the plan is. Like you're building the plan out of Justin Herbert. So I'm curious, I think, to see what the Chargers run game just continues to look like going forward.
It's interesting to me as we start moving into the playoffs because the way they play can get really, really tricky when you play really good offenses. And the AFC is loaded with really good offenses. You have the Buffalo Bills, you have the Baltimore Ravens, you have the Kansas City Chiefs, who we haven't seen, kick off majorly, but certainly can ignite at any time, especially in the playoffs. The other matchups I'm a little bit more interested in, especially given we saw how this game goes. I think there is a version of this game where maybe penalties don't go their way. We saw penalties be a big factor, even though that's a little bit more variance, where the Broncos are able to kind of, get a score in the second half or get a score in the second half. This ends up being the Broncos game, and the defense is able to settle down a little bit more. And that's what worries me on the flip side of that. If you're taking this run-first approach against a team like the Steelers or a team like the Broncos to a certain degree, or a team like the Texans, that can kind of really get you in trouble, particularly when you have guys like CJ Stroud or Russell Wilson who are, pretty much wholly surrounded by, at this point, big play ability, and that's the goal of theirs. And if they hit 2 or 3 of those plays, it could spell trouble for you. It's a really touch and go, approach of saying, we're going to run the ball on first down. It's probably not going to work. It's shown over the games. And at this point, we're just going to, put the bank on Justin Herbert. Worked out today. It's worked out a lot in his career. Just something to watch as we move forward. But I do want to highlight a good situation for the audience. I knew about this situation because this rule goes all the way down to high school. I actually did this twice in my high school career where we fair caught a ball on purpose at around the midfield mark and ended up kicking a free kick. And it worked out for the Chargers. Now, were there some game management stuff before that probably could have been managed a little bit better? Sure. However, we ended up with a very cool rule set situation where we have a 57-yard free kick after a punt. Shawn, talk me through it.
Sam, I like rules. Like you're finding different ways to manipulate them, or it's like unfound rules, or like obviously Bill Belichick will, what the rule is, but how the refs ref it. So you're trying to find a way to kind of pull it in one direction. Now, I will say, should the Chargers have maybe called timeouts early, you could argue that, or maybe, Harbaugh foresaw this beautiful free kick opportunity where, you get that fair catch. You obviously have that penalty that can add on. And I'm thinking about it more now where, these kickers can kick the ball. Like they can really, really drive that thing down an entire field. So their range, it feels like you can be comfortable. Now the accuracy, of course, like you're kicking at that distance. Like I'm not expecting all these guys to make it, but I hope we get more situations like this, whether it's defenses finding different ways to call timeouts kind of in that end of half situation, or if coaches are good enough to be able to kind of conserve those timeouts, not specifically for this, but, if you have timeouts, just like kind of in kind of an end of half type situation. I mean, not that that was wholly the difference in this game. Of course, the Chargers added on that final touchdown work. Would have loved the Broncos to just go for on fourth down instead of punting that one away. I think it was really exciting because now everyone gets to learn about the rules a little bit more. Now we wait for 10 more years for it to happen again. And when it's then, I hope it's like an 85-yarder where someone's just booming that thing across the entire field.
Yeah, that was the interesting thing to me was typically in that situation, you'd expect them, because there's no rush, to not take a normal, 3-step up to the ball and kick it like a field goal. You expect them to take a more kickoff like swing at it. Obviously, that probably can lead to a little bit more inaccuracy. It works out at 57 yards. Dicker's range probably is 57 yards to begin with. I want to know what the range was specified as beforehand, if they did know about the free kick, because I believe there was a 15-yard penalty for kick catch interference or something like that, or maybe it was unnecessary roughness. I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was a penalty that put them in the range. I'm wondering if the
72-yard attempt. Take the 15 yards away. Give me the 72-yard attempt. I would love to see that. Although you could say, hey, let me just have Herbert throw the ball as far as I can. I mean, I would love to see that because I mean, Dicker's a guy who can hit, like he can hit it from 60. Like I don't have any concern there. So you might as well just go ahead and try the full 72.
Yeah, Brett agrees with you. Dicker made 59 in preseason. I'm wondering if the 65 wasn't the range that they were thinking about doing this, because then you can get that full swing at it and really test it out. And also it's really no downside, it's at triple zeros. So interesting play, interesting stuff. Speaking of interesting stuff, we got a really interesting slate this weekend. We're kind of in the zone where teams are making moves. The AFC seems pretty set. The Bengals are probably going to keep trying to win. Hopefully there's some shenanigans because I'd love to see some more of that offense and playoff football. But there's all kinds of interesting stuff. So, Shawn, what are you looking forward to this weekend?
I'm hoping, Sam, maybe we get some time to do another live reaction where Saturday we have Chiefs Texans, we have Ravens Steelers. I mean, Chiefs Texans, Patrick Mahomes, just his like superhero serum inside of his ankle is incredible. His injury did not look good, and for him to be able to play is pretty sweet. I hope that we're able to see the Texans offensive line just smooth things out overall. We get a good performance from Stroud, and then we get Ravens Steelers, where a huge game. I still think the Ravens should be able to win the AFC North, which obviously has big playoff implications. I think that's going to be a good Saturday. And then for me on Sunday, I think the Eagles-Commanders game is going to be really fun. That first time that Jaden Daniels went up against Vic Fangio's defense, it felt like, the Commanders' offense was so hot. The Eagles' defense was just about to start breaking out. I want to see, off a full week instead of a short week. That game was played on Thursday night. This one, of course, played on Sunday. Maybe you get a little bit of a better game from the Commanders. And I want to see what Mike McDonald's got for the Vikings. I want to see him scheme up some shenanigans for Sam Darnold and the Vikings, who are a team that I just feel like can absolutely do whatever they want at times. So I'm interested to see what happens there. It feels like, the playoff picture, it is pretty clear, where it feels like we know in both conferences, generally these are going to be the teams. We feel like we know exactly who the contenders are going to be. Obviously, there's some seeding to go, where are the Lions going to be able to hold out that one seed at the end of the regular season. So overall, I just think it's a really good week.
I think there's some really interesting just matchups, even with the teams that are not necessarily in the playoff race. I'm going to start with the team that I think really is in the playoff race, shockingly, that made a move that I think was a great move that we've talked about all week across the Sumer Sports platforms. But that's Atlanta, kind of getting a preseason game at this point for Michael Penix Jr. against the New York Giants. The Giants have not looked good in many weeks. We'll see where it ends up going there. But I think if there's any, warm-up game for him to take, it's against a team that is really struggling at the quarterback position and, frankly, all across the defense. I'm really excited to see how he does if they are able to get a win there. Tampa Bay is playing a Dallas team that's starting to, kind of figure it out at this point, particularly on the offensive side of the ball with the run game. You got guys like Tyler Smith playing really well, and Matt Stopsky throwing me off because he's very upset about my Giants commentary, but that's just the way it's turned out, man. It's draft season. Hopefully we can catch a Giants mock draft from our friend Matt Stopsky out there. But Tampa Bay and Dallas is really an interesting matchup because I think this is one that could actually go wrong for Tampa Bay. We've seen Dallas play better in recent weeks. I understand they have Cooper Rush. We've seen the Tampa Bay defense play better in recent weeks, but I'd still consider them not trustworthy. What are your thoughts about that Tampa Bay Dallas matchup, Shawn?
I love Tampa Bay's rushing offense this season. I think what Liam Cohen has done there with the way that they're running counter, where you have one guy kind of standing up a player, a second guy just totally washing that guy down, whether you're, arc releasing a tackle and just finding different angles where you're pushing things a little bit closer inside. I think Bucky Irving has had a really, really good season. And, I like watching Baker Mayfield in that offense as well, where, I want Mike Evans to get to 1,000 yards. I'm certainly rooting hard for that. So it feels like a little bit of a tough one, where I do think the Cowboys defense, they obviously have guys like Michael Parsons where you can make play after play after play. Right. And Parsons has no desire to give up on the season, which I love. I really, really love seeing that from him. I think it might be a little bit tough keeping up with the Tampa Bay offense that I felt really good about. But I'm also glad that you mentioned Michael Penix Jr., where, we're sitting next to each other in the draft room, where when that pick happens, we hear everyone making all sorts of noises, obviously out of surprise there. I think, and I assume we agree on this, it's really like Atlanta's offensive infrastructure. We love Darnell Mooney here, right? You get Drake London, you obviously have Bijan Robinson. I think Lindstrom maybe has taken a little bit of a step back this season, unfortunately, in pass protection, but I think Zach Robinson is a good offensive coordinator, and I think he's going to be able to access more parts of the field, where we think of Penix at Washington, where he's throwing that deep and outside ball constantly. I think Darnell Mooney woke up probably smiling a little bit today, just thinking about the air yard share, Sam. It's going through the roof. This guy wants to throw the ball down the field. I'm excited for them to have more options in terms of just all their boot plays that Robinson, of course, wants to get to, that you can hand the ball off in both directions because you're not worried about, Penix pushing off another foot. I obviously hope Kirk Cousins is not done for a career, because I've enjoyed watching Kirk Cousins and just the different things he's done in certainly in Minnesota, of course, in Washington before that as well. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned those two games. I didn't mention them at all because they don't have, they do have playoff implications, because if the Falcons end up tying the Buccaneers record, Falcons have the tiebreaker there. But yeah, Sam, now you're talking me into the NFC South here.
Yeah, and Shawn, you're a big KOC appreciator. We got another, Rams tree, McVay tree guy. I'm really interested to see how much this attack ends up resembling the Sam Darnold Vikings offense. I think it could look very similar, given you have two wide receivers that have played really well this year. You have a tight end that can catch the ball, and you have some good running backs back there. I wouldn't be shocked if we, as you noted, see that ADOT go absolutely through the roof. But Shawn, before we close out, I'm gonna put you on the spot here, because we have an interesting conundrum here on Saturday. I grew up in the South, grew up a little bit more around college football. I love my Saints. I'm a diehard Saints fan. They're my number one. But the McNeese Cowboys, the LSU Tigers, the Tulane Green Wave, I was doing a lot of rooting for them back in the day. And we have a clash on Saturday. We have NFL football, which will probably overtake and outrate the college football playoff games. Well, should we be blending our football? Are you just a more football is more football, more volume, I got 6 screens up guy? Or do we need to preserve the sanctity of the Saturday?
Sam, this is a really hard question, because you obviously play college football. You have college football in your veins and really in your heart. And for me, it's NFL first. So I was talking even today, just after that free kick happened, I was immensely excited, but I got kind of sad. I was like, man, there's going to be a day when this season's over, and that's going to hurt really, really bad. So is more football necessarily good football? I think yes. For me, my eyes are going to be on the pro games, certainly a little bit more than the college games. I think, if you're 2 screening, for me, when I'm writing my Monday morning column, Sam, it's a lot of screens. So, you could convince me to maybe peek on a second screen a little bit, talk about SMU. Obviously, I'm in the Dallas area, so we got people rooting in that direction. I think you could maybe convince me, but I'm not sure, Sam. It's an interesting little conundrum. I would argue it's a good conundrum.
Look, I'm coming out blazing here. I'm an NFL guy. I love the NFL. We're getting close to the end of the year, and typically, the time when I'd be able to devote a midweek game as we're going into the playoffs, a midday or mid-evening eye to the side would be around Christmas Day, because Christmas Day has always been the basketball coming out party. The NFL took that over. That's over. Now Beyonce is performing at a Texans game. That's KO'd. Netflix is involved. I gave up my Christmas back to the NFL, but now they're taking my Saturdays, man. Like, you got Sunday. Let's enjoy Sunday. Sunday is a holy day when it comes to football, and Saturday's a holy day too when it comes to college football. Like, let's have our schedule correct and let's enjoy everything in moderation. But if you don't want to enjoy stuff in moderation, listen to me and Shawn Syed, because we don't moderate when it comes to football, because we love football and we watch it all the time. And we come to you each week with lovely podcasts like the Stats and Scheme podcast, like the SumerDaily podcast, and like the Sumer Sports Show. So, Shawn, thank you for all the hard work that you have done. And I'm excited to close out the end of the season with you. Thank you, sir. He's Shawn Syed. I'm Sam Brookhouse. Thank y'all for listening.